What do you take me for? Why would you get me this cheap, filthy trash? His words cut through the air like a knife. My son-in-law, standing there, surrounded by family and friends, picked up the gift my grandson had spent weeks making for him and threw it right back across the table. For a moment, even the music stopped. His parents laughed. My daughter froze. I didn't argue. I only pulled back my investment, the villa I bought for their family, the fund I opened for their future, and the BMW I had planned to gift him that day. You're on your own now, I said quietly. He thought I was joking until everything disappeared. Before I take you through how everything fell apart, please like this video, subscribe, and comment below where you're watching from: Nigeria, the US, the UK, the Philippines, or anywhere around the world. Because this story is one every parent and grandparent needs to hear. You see, I never thought I'd be sitting here at 68 years old, telling you about the day I had to destroy a man to save my family. My name doesn't matter. What matters is that I learned the hard way that sometimes love looks like cutting off the very hand that feeds on your generosity. Sometimes protecting your blood means watching someone you once cared for crash and burn by their own arrogance. I built my life from nothing. When my husband died 12 years ago, I could have folded. I could have let grief consume me and lived off his pension like a ghost. Instead, I took our modest savings and turned it into something real: rental properties, a small logistics company, investments that grew because I understood one simple truth: money respects those who respect money. I never forgot where I came from, but I also never apologized for where I was going. My daughter Sarah was everything to me after her father passed. Smart, beautiful, hardworking, she inherited her father's gentle heart and my stubborn streak. When she met Marcus 7 years ago, I wanted to believe he was good enough for her. He wasn't wealthy, but neither was I when I started. He came from a struggling family in the township, worked odd jobs, had that hungry look in his eyes that reminded me of myself decades earlier. I thought hunger meant ambition. I was wrong. Sometimes hunger just means you're willing to bite any hand that feeds you. When they got engaged, I made a decision that would haunt me for years. I believed in him more than his own parents ever did. While his family questioned whether he deserved my daughter, I opened my wallet and my heart. I helped them put a down payment on their first home, not a mansion, but a decent 3-bedroom in a good neighborhood where my grandson could grow up safe. I co-signed the loan when his credit wasn't enough. I didn't see it as charity. I saw it as investment in my daughter's happiness. But that was just the beginning. When Marcus mentioned wanting to start his own construction business, I didn't just encourage him, I funded him. $50,000 for equipment, another $20,000 for startup costs. When he needed contracts to build credibility, I connected him with my network. When he struggled with cash flow, I made him property manager for 2 of my rental buildings so he'd have steady income. I wasn't just supporting my daughter's husband, I was creating the foundation for my grandson's future. The little boy, my Jeremy, became the center of my world in ways his father never could. At 5 years old, he had his grandfather's eyes and his mother's curiosity. He'd spend weekends with me, learning about business, watching me negotiate deals, helping me collect rent from tenants who adored his gap-toothed smile. Jeremy saw how I built things, how I treated people with respect regardless of their bank account, how I never forgot that every dollar earned was a blessing that could vanish if you stopped being grateful. Marcus, unfortunately, learned different lessons. As his business grew and the contracts got bigger, something shifted. The hungry young man who used to thank me for every opportunity became the arrogant fool who started acting like he'd built everything himself. It started small, interrupting me during family dinners, correcting my business advice in front of others, talking about his empire like I hadn't handed him the keys to the kingdom. I watched him change, and I stayed quiet because I thought maybe success needed room to breathe. I was wrong about that too. The disrespect escalated month by month. Marcus would arrive late to family gatherings if he showed up at all. When he did come, He'd spend the entire time on his phone, taking calls about deals I'd helped him secure, acting like he was too important for family time. He started referring to my properties as investments we managed together, conveniently forgetting who actually owned everything. When Jeremy would run to hug him after school, Marcus would brush him off, claiming he was too busy with important work to play with a child. I documented every insult, every dismissal, every moment when this man I'd lifted from nothing treated my family like we were beneath him. I kept quiet because I wanted my daughter to see it for herself. I kept quiet because I hoped he'd remember where he came from before it was too late. I kept quiet because sometimes giving someone enough rope means watching them hang themselves with their own arrogance. The birthday party was supposed to be a celebration. Marcus was turning 32, and Sarah had planned everything perfectly. His favorite food, his friends from the old neighborhood, his new business partners who treated him like he was already wealthy. I came early to help set up, watching my daughter stress over every detail because she wanted her husband to feel special. Jeremy had been working on his gift for weeks, hiding in my garage whenever he visited, using old nails and scrap wood to build something with his tiny hands. "It's a picture frame, Grandmama," he'd whispered to me the week before. "For Daddy's favorite photo of us. I'm making it strong so it never breaks." This 5-year-old boy, using tools almost too heavy for him to hold, creating something from nothing because he loved his father. The irony wasn't lost on me. Here was a child building with his hands what his father had forgotten was built by mine. The party started well enough. Marcus held court like he owned the world, telling stories about big contracts and future plans. His parents beamed with pride, finally seeing their son as successful. His old friends listened with a mixture of admiration and envy. His business partners nodded approvingly at his ambition. And there I sat, the woman who made it all possible, treated like a guest in a success story I'd written. Jeremy waited patiently through dinner, through the toasts, through the endless talking. He clutched his gift wrapped in newspaper because we'd made it together, just like his grandfather used to wrap presents when money was tight but love was abundant. When the moment finally came for presents, Jeremy pushed through the crowd of adults, his face bright with excitement. "Daddy, I made this for you," he announced, holding up his creation with both hands. The adults paused their conversations, smiling at the innocent interruption. Sarah's eyes filled with tears of pride as she watched her son present his labor of love. I held my breath, hoping this moment would remind Marcus of what actually mattered. Instead, I watched my son-in-law destroy everything in 10 seconds. Marcus took the gift, looked at it with disgust, and said those words that would change everything. "What do you take me for? Why would you get me this cheap, filthy trash?" The room went silent except for the sound of wood hitting the floor as he threw my grandson's gift back across the table. The beautiful frame Jeremy had spent weeks building shattered against the wall, pieces scattering like my heart. His parents laughed. Actually laughed. Like my grandson's tears were entertainment. Like the destruction of a child's love was somehow funny. His business partner smirked, uncomfortable but unwilling to challenge their new golden boy. My daughter stood frozen, caught between defending her son and avoiding embarrassment in front of the crowd. But Jeremy's face, Jeremy's face, broke something inside me that I knew would never heal. He didn't understand what had happened. He just wanted his father to smile. He wanted his gift to make Daddy happy. Instead, he stood there watching his creation in pieces, watching the man he idolized reject everything he'd worked to build. That's when I knew. Not suspected, not worried, but knew with absolute certainty that Marcus had forgotten the most important lesson in life: respect. Respect for effort, respect for love, respect for the people who lift you up when you can't stand on your own. He'd lost it completely, and worse, he was teaching my grandson that love didn't matter if it wasn't expensive. I didn't yell. I didn't make a scene. I simply stood up, took Jeremy's hand, and walked toward the door. "Where are you going?" Sarah called after me, finally finding her voice. "We're leaving," I said quietly. "Jeremy needs to learn what respect looks like, and he won't learn it here." Marcus called after me, his voice full of that arrogant confidence that had been building for months. "Come on, Mama, don't be dramatic. It's just a kid's craft project. We'll buy him some real art supplies. Just a kid's craft project." As if love could be purchased at the store. As if the hours Jeremy spent in my garage, the careful way he'd hammered each nail, the pride in his voice when he showed me his progress, as if none of that mattered because it wasn't bought with money. I turned around once at the door. "You're right, Marcus. It was just a craft project. And this is just business." Then Jeremy and I walked out of that house, leaving behind a room full of people who had no idea they'd just witnessed the beginning of the end. That night, after I'd tucked Jeremy into the guest room at my house and explained that sometimes grown-ups need time to remember how to be kind, I sat down at my computer. For years, I'd managed investments, property titles, trust accounts, business partnerships, all the financial architecture that had made Marcus's success possible. He'd forgotten who built the floor he was standing on. It was time to remind him. I pulled up every document, every contract, every financial connection that tied his life to my generosity. The villa they lived in? Purchased with a loan I'd co-signed and guaranteed. His business equipment? Financed through a line of credit backed by my properties. The BMW I'd planned to surprise him with at the party? The down payment had been transferred that morning, waiting for his signature. Most importantly, the rental properties he managed, properties that provided his steady income and business credibility, were titled in my name with power of attorney agreements that I could revoke at any time. Marcus had grown comfortable forgetting that detail. He'd started telling people he owned multiple properties, conveniently leaving out that he was just the manager of mine. I didn't yell. I executed. Every business decision is just math and consequences. He'd calculated that he could disrespect my grandson without cost. It was time to show him the real price of arrogance. By midnight, I'd drafted the paperwork. By morning, it would be filed. The power of attorney agreements? Terminated. The co-signed loans? I was exercising my right to accelerate repayment. The BMW financing? Withdrawn. The property management contracts? Ended with 30-day notice as contractually allowed. The next morning started normally for Marcus. He probably woke up in the bed I'd helped him buy, in the house I'd helped him afford, planning his day around the business I'd helped him build. He probably felt satisfied with himself for putting that ungrateful kid in his place. He probably thought the old woman had learned her lesson about where she fit in his new important life. The first sign came at the bank. His business card declined when he tried to buy coffee. Insufficient funds, the machine said. Embarrassing, but not alarming, cash flow problems happen in construction. He'd call the bank later and sort it out. The second sign came when he tried to access the rental property accounts. Password incorrect. Strange, but maybe the system had updated. He'd call me later and get it sorted out. The third sign came when his key wouldn't work in the villa's front door. The locks had been changed overnight, per my instructions to the property management company. There was a notice on the door explaining that the home was being reclaimed due to loan default, and the residents had 30 days to arrange alternative housing. That's when his phone started ringing. His business partners, confused about why their joint accounts were frozen. His suppliers, wondering why payments were being declined. The BMW dealership, explaining that the financing had been withdrawn and could he please return to discuss alternative arrangements. By noon, Marcus was calling me. I let it ring 6 times before answering. "What the hell did you do?" he demanded, that arrogant tone still there but cracking around the edges. "I kept my promise," I said calmly. "You're on your own now. This is insane. You can't just destroy my business because of some stupid kid's toy." "I'm not destroying anything, Marcus. I'm just taking back what was always mine. You'll be fine after all. You built all this success yourself, didn't you? The silence stretched long enough for the truth to sink in. Every major contract he'd won had come through my connections. Every piece of equipment he owned was financed against my properties. Every credential that made clients trust him was built on foundations I'd provided. Please, he said, and for the first time in months, he sounded like the humble young man who'd asked for my daughter's hand 7 years ago. I'll apologize. I'll make it right with Jeremy. Just please don't do this. Marcus, I said, keeping my voice steady, respect isn't something you can apologize for after you've thrown it away. It's something you show every day, especially to the people who love you unconditionally. My grandson spent weeks building something for you because he loves you. You threw it back in his face because it wasn't expensive enough for your new standards. That tells me everything I need to know about who you've become. But the business will survive or fail based on what you actually built, not what I gave you. That's how real success works. I hung up and turned off my phone. There would be more calls, more desperation, more attempts to manipulate his way back into my good graces. But the decision was made. Some bridges burn because they need to burn. The next few days were chaos for Marcus, but peaceful for Jeremy and me. We spent mornings in the garden, afternoons building new projects in the garage, this time for Jeremy's own room. He asked about his father twice, and I told him the truth in language he could understand. Sometimes adults need to remember how to be grateful, and sometimes that takes time. Sarah called crying on the 3rd day. Mom, what have you done? Marcus is falling apart. His business is collapsing. We're going to lose everything. You're not going to lose everything, I assured her. You're going to lose the things that never actually belong to you. There's a difference. But Jeremy's father forgot that being a man means protecting the people who love you, not just accumulating things that make you look successful. Jeremy needs to see what accountability looks like, even if it's painful to watch. The rumors spread quickly in our community. Word traveled that Marcus had insulted the very woman who'd made his success possible, that he'd publicly humiliated a child who loved him. In our culture, disrespecting elders, especially ones who'd lifted you up, was social suicide. Clients started questioning his character. Suppliers began demanding cash payments instead of extending credit. Business partners reconsidered their associations. His own parents called me furious and desperate. How could you destroy our son's life over a child's tantrum? His mother demanded. Your son destroyed his own life, I replied. I just stopped enabling him to destroy mine. That boy provoked him with that ugly gift. That boy spent weeks creating something with love. Your son responded with cruelty. If you can't see the difference, you raised him exactly as I thought you did. She hung up on me, but the damage was done. Word spread that even Marcus's own family blamed everyone except him for his downfall. People began to understand that this wasn't about money, it was about character. Meanwhile, Marcus tried desperately to rebuild. He reached out to old contacts, begging for work. He applied for loans from banks that wouldn't touch him without the collateral I'd withdrawn. He attempted to rent equipment with credit that no longer existed. Every door that had opened easily when he carried my backing slammed shut when he stood alone. The construction industry is small in our city. Everyone knows everyone, and reputation is currency. Marcus's reputation was now that of a man who bit the hand that fed him, who humiliated a child, who forgot where he came from the moment he achieved modest success. That reputation followed him to every job site, every potential client meeting, every attempt to restart what he'd lost. 2 weeks after the birthday party, Sarah brought Jeremy to stay with me temporarily. She was ashamed, heartbroken, and finally seeing clearly who her husband had become. I should have stood up for Jeremy, she cried in my kitchen. I should have defended him the moment Marcus threw that gift. I was just so embarrassed, so caught up in trying not to make a scene. You were protecting your marriage, I told her. But some marriages aren't worth protecting when they require you to sacrifice your child's dignity. What do I do now, Mom? I love him, but I can't respect him. How do you love someone you can't respect? You don't, I said simply. Love without respect is just dependency with emotions attached. You deserve better. Jeremy deserves better. That conversation broke my heart because I recognized my daughter's pain. I'd loved her father deeply, but I'd also respected him completely. He would never have thrown a child's gift across a room. He would never have mocked innocent love. He would have celebrated Jeremy's effort and taught him how to build even better frames. The difference between the man I'd married and the man my daughter had married was becoming clearer every day. 3 weeks after the party, Marcus showed up at my gate. It was nearly midnight, and he was drunk, not stumbling drunk, but drunk enough that his pride had dissolved into desperation. The security guard called to ask if I wanted to see him. Part of me wanted to say no, to let him stand there in the rain understanding what it felt like to be locked out. But Jeremy was asleep upstairs, and I needed this conversation to happen where my grandson couldn't hear it. I met Marcus at the gate, not inviting him in. He looked terrible, unshaven, thin, wearing clothes that hadn't been washed in days. The arrogant man who'd thrown my grandson's gift was gone, replaced by someone I almost didn't recognize. Please, he started, his voice breaking. I'll do anything. I'll apologize to Jeremy. I'll work for free to pay you back. I'll sign any contract you want. Just please give me a chance to fix this. I looked at this broken man and felt something I hadn't expected, not satisfaction, not victory, but sadness. Marcus, I said quietly, do you understand what you did wrong? I disrespected Jeremy's gift. I was ungrateful for everything you've done for us. No, I said. That's what you did. I asked if you understand what you did wrong. He stared at me confused. You mocked love, I continued. You took a 5-year-old boy who worships you, who spent weeks creating something with his own hands because he loves you, and you taught him that love isn't valuable unless it's expensive. You took my grandson's pure heart and threw it back in his face in front of everyone he looks up to. That's what you did wrong. The tears started then, ugly and real. I know. God, I know. I don't know what happened to me. I just got so caught up in trying to impress everyone, trying to prove I belonged with the successful people. I forgot what actually mattered. You didn't forget, Marcus. You chose. Every time you ignored Jeremy after school, you chose business over family. Every time you corrected me in front of others, you chose pride over gratitude. Every time you acted like you built everything yourself, you chose lies over truth. The birthday party wasn't a moment of forgetting, it was the inevitable result of months of choosing wrong. He nodded, broken but finally understanding. Here's what's going to happen, I continued. You're going to learn what it means to build something real with your own hands and your own character. You're going to work construction jobs for other people until you remember that every dollar is earned, not given. You're going to prove that you can be grateful before you try to be successful again. I reached into my jacket and pulled out an envelope. Inside was the broken picture frame, carefully mended and reinforced. Jeremy had insisted on fixing it himself, and he'd painted a message on the back, "Forgive me, Daddy. I'll make better presents when I'm bigger." Marcus took the frame and read the message. His shoulders shook as he cried, not the manipulative tears of a man trying to get what he wanted, but the genuine grief of someone finally understanding what he'd lost. "He forgives me?" Marcus whispered. "Children always forgive," I said. "The question is whether you can forgive yourself and become the man worthy of that forgiveness." I turned to walk back to my house, leaving him standing at the gate with the mended frame. "What about Sarah?" he called after me. "What about our marriage?" "That's between you and her," I answered without turning around. "But you should know she's learned the difference between a husband and a father. If you want to be both, you have to prove you can be either." I never saw Marcus at my gate again. He left town 2 days later, taking work with a construction crew 3 hours away. Sarah heard from him occasionally. Short calls where he'd ask about Jeremy but never push for visits. He was learning humility the hard way, which was the only way he'd ever learn it. Sarah thrived during those months. She came back to work for my company as an accountant, bringing skills she'd learned managing Marcus's failed business. Watching her rediscover her confidence reminded me why I'd fought so hard to protect her. She was brilliant, capable, and strong, qualities that had been overshadowed by her husband's ego and her own misplaced loyalty. Jeremy flourished too. Without the tension of his parents' troubled marriage, he became more talkative, more creative, more willing to share his thoughts and dreams. We started a woodworking business together, Jeremy and Grandmama's Creations, making simple items that we'd sell at the local market. He learned to use tools properly, to measure twice and cut once, to take pride in work done well. One Saturday morning, 6 months after the birthday party, Jeremy finished a jewelry box he'd been making for his mother. It was beautiful, smooth joints, careful staining, a small mirror inside the lid. As he put the finishing touches on it, he looked up at me with those serious eyes he'd inherited from his grandfather. "Grandmama," he said, "do you think Daddy would like this jewelry box?" My heart ached for this little boy who still loved a father who'd hurt him. "I think your daddy would be very proud of how well you built it," I said carefully. "Maybe when he comes back, I'll make him something even better. Something that won't break when people are angry." "Jeremy," I said, sitting down next to him at the workbench, "anger doesn't break gifts. Anger only breaks hearts. Your gift was beautiful because it came from love. If someone breaks it, that's their choice, not your fault." He nodded solemnly, then smiled. "I think I'll make him a really strong box next time, with metal corners so it can't break even if he's really, really angry." That's when I understood that Jeremy had learned the most important lesson of all: love persistently, but protect your heart wisely. 8 months later, Sarah received divorce papers that Marcus had filed from his new city. He wasn't asking for anything, not the house, not custody, not financial support. The papers included a letter explaining that he was working to become the man he should have been, but that he understood he'd lost the right to be Jeremy's father until he could prove he deserved it. Sarah cried when she read the letter, but they were tears of relief, not regret. "He's finally taking responsibility," she said. "It's too late for us, but maybe it's not too late for him." Jeremy asked about the divorce once. I explained that sometimes adults realize they're not good partners for each other, and that it's better for everyone to live honestly apart than to live unhappily together. He seemed to understand, especially when I assured him that divorce didn't mean his father stopped loving him. It just meant his father was learning how to love better. A year after that terrible birthday party, Jeremy won first place in his school's craft fair for a wooden toolbox he'd built entirely by himself. The local newspaper ran a photo of him holding his ribbon, standing next to his creation with a gap-toothed grin. The caption read, "6-year-old Jeremy Thompson proves that the best gifts come from patience, practice, and love." I framed that newspaper clipping and hung it in my office, right next to a photo of Jeremy's grandfather building a birdhouse 40 years ago. Some things skip generations, but the important things always find their way through. Sarah started dating again eventually, a teacher from Jeremy's school who appreciated homemade gifts and understood that a child's effort was worth more than any expensive toy. Watching her choose differently, choose better, told me that the painful lessons had been worth learning. Jeremy still makes gifts for special occasions. Beautiful, careful, thoughtful creations that show his growing skill and unchanging heart. We display them proudly, and everyone who sees them understands that love made these items precious, not money. As for Marcus, we heard updates occasionally through mutual friends. He was working steadily, living simply, attending counseling to understand how his pride had destroyed his family. He never asked to return, never demanded visits with Jeremy, never tried to contact me directly. Perhaps he'd finally learned that earning respect requires time, consistency, and humility. I think about that birthday party often, Not with anger anymore, but with gratitude. Sometimes the most devastating moments become the most transformative ones. Jeremy learned that love isn't measured by expense, but by effort. Sarah learned that enabling disrespect doesn't preserve marriage, it destroys self-worth. And I learned that protecting the people you love sometimes requires being willing to be seen as the villain. The moral of this story isn't complicated. Family doesn't mean unconditional funding. Love without respect is just entitlement in disguise. And never let anyone mistake your kindness for weakness, because sometimes silence is the loudest form of power. I'm 70 now. Jeremy is 8, building birdhouses that would make his grandfather proud. Sarah is engaged to a man who treasures every imperfect gift Jeremy creates. My business continues to grow because it's built on respect, integrity, and the understanding that money serves relationships, not the other way around. Every morning, I sit in my garden with my coffee, listening to Jeremy's laughter echoing from the garage where he's building his latest project. The peace I feel now is worth every difficult decision I made that year. Some bridges need to burn so that better ones can be built. Some people need to fall so they can learn how to stand properly. Some gifts need to break so that stronger ones can take their place. Never let anyone convince you that protecting your family's dignity is cruel. Never let anyone tell you that withdrawing support from disrespectful people makes you heartless. And never forget that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst behavior. Family isn't about blood or marriage certificates. Family is about respect, gratitude, and the understanding that we lift each other up not because we have to, but because we choose to. When someone forgets that choice has consequences, it's not your job to keep choosing for them. Jeremy calls me into the garage now, excited to show me his newest creation, a picture frame, strong and beautiful, with metal corners that will never break no matter how angry anyone gets. He's learned to build things that last, things that honor love instead of mocking it. As I admire his work, I think about the gift that started everything: broken wood, scattered nails, a child's tears on a birthday party floor. That moment taught us all what we needed to know about the difference between building up and tearing down, between humility and arrogance, between love that protects and love that enables. Sometimes the most expensive gifts come free, and the most valuable lessons come wrapped in pain. Jeremy's frame is beautiful not because it cost money, but because it carries wisdom. It represents a child who learned to love persistently and a grandmother who learned to love protectively. The frame sits on my desk now, holding a photo of Jeremy and his grandfather, 2 builders, 2 generations apart, both understanding that the strongest foundations are built with respect, patience, and hands willing to work for what they value. That's the gift that will never break, no matter how much force is applied against it. That's the investment that pays returns for generations. That's the love worth protecting at any cost. Never forget, respect is the only currency that matters, and sometimes silence is the loudest form of power.